Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Q49 Podcast, brought to you exclusively by the Hoosier Network. I am Austin Platt, joined alongside today Joe Cronin and Sam Brunsman from the HN Beat, and our very special guest today, a former HN Beat reporter now working for SI, Matt Byrne, ladies and gentlemen. Claps, claps, claps. Matt, welcome aboard.
Hey, it's good to be back. I've not been on the Q49 in a while, but it's good to be back.
We've been trying to get you on. I've
repeated myself, by the way.
It's okay.
So.
It happens to the best of us. There's always screw-ups in this podcast. But glad to have you back. You were part of the crew that went to Lexington, Kentucky after Indiana drew 1-1 to the Wildcats after they had a week off following a 0-0 draw against Michigan. So Indiana right now sitting at 3-3-4, about at the halfway point of the season. The calendar has slipped from September to October, which potentially means it's spooky season, right, Joe?
Absolutely. I mean, now we're in October. We've already had that discussion. It's spooky season. I mean, we even saw it when Kentucky scored in the 29th minute just a few days ago when they let off that flare and there's the haze. Was that not spooky season in that moment?
No context. College soccer. That's what it is. That's what it is.
Well, regardless, it was a fun match for all, and Indiana scored first, courtesy of Carson Henderlong, who got the start. That is a talking point we want to discuss today, and then Kentucky scored felt like moments later, but it was really about 15 or so minutes later after JT Harms saved a penalty, but Kentucky eventually got the goal on a long throw. But obviously the storyline in that match, fellas, was Indiana kind of dominating, especially in the second half when they really played their best, but were still unable to find that second goal. Chances in the 6-yard box. They outshot Kentucky 14-10 on the night, and in the second half the shots were 10-4. So I guess overall your thoughts on this match after Indiana had a week off?
Yeah, I mean, in the first half, this looked like a game where for really the first time all season, a team was matching the offensive firepower. I mean, you say firepower pretty loosely with the inability to score goals this year, but a team was, Kentucky had more shots in the first half. They had more opportunities, and they looked like they were going to even take the lead right after they scored that goal, and they were knocking on the door with the penalty kick. In the second half, the Hoosiers kind of figured it out. They had some moments, but once again, they're just trying to jam the wings, cross it in, and just the services that they're playing across have just not been good, and they're rotating a lot of different players up top. Henderlong really was in and out in that second half, and I just think there's not consistent play up top, which is just led to the lack of scoring. And even breaking through in the 11th minute, you thought maybe there's a chance they get 2 or 3, and then just stalemate after that.
I mean, yeah, Indiana had their fair share of chances throughout both halves. Obviously, in the second half, they had a lot more. And when it came down to it towards the end, I mean, obviously Kentucky got that red card, which sent them off, and then they're playing with 10 men. And something I always saw, like, being right there by the pitch, Indiana was playing, like, they would get balls in, and then they would, like, try to, like, sell the play. And that's something I really noticed in that match. I mean, Sarver played a ball in with, like, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes left. Mahalik got it, and it was literally just him and the keeper, it felt like. I mean, and he tried to sell it because he felt contact on his back, which is, like, the smart play. Like, I get it. But it's not really a smart play, but it's, like, if you're one-on-one with the keeper, you can just, like, toe it by him. But, I mean, they had their chances, just couldn't get the result they wanted.
Yeah, and you mentioned afterwards, I'll quickly jump in here. You asked Todd Yaley kind of about the officiating, which we thought, maybe was a bit suspect at times, some delayed calls from the official. Obviously, there was the review on the penalty to see whether it was inside or outside the box. Hugo Bachrach picked up a yellow and could have picked up another yellow, considering he was the one that conceded the penalty. Obviously, Harms made a big save, but in the very end, Matt, Indiana, not desperate necessarily, but they were trying to bring on Andrew Goldsworthy to help out with those corners and long throws. Eventually couldn't get anything, but it felt like there were times where Indiana gave up some pretty good chances.
Well, I think that there's a very interesting disparity between the first half goal and the second half missed chances in the way that the first half goal with Carson Henderlong, he just took one touch and fired. It was an excellent strike, and it didn't really seem like there was much thought involved. It was just due. And it seemed like in the second half when Indiana, even though they had numbers, there was one too many passes on 3 separate occasions, and then there was a few scrambles in the box off corners as well, and it seemed like there was too much thought involved rather than just do in the box, and I think that that's something that definitely caused them.
Well, there was that moment when Mahalik had the ball, he cuts in at the top of the box, and it just seemed like he ran right into Henderlong right as he was about to shoot it. It was just a miscommunication like that. And then Sarver played a ball right in between the 6th and the penalty spot to Justin Schreffler, the freshman who came in. He had some quality minutes, and he just had this huge touch rather than trying to shoot it first time. eyes lit up a little bit too much, obviously in the heat of the moment. But, it's stuff like that it almost seems like they're beating themselves up to try and get goals.
And it's interesting because they had their fair share of corner kicks and free kicks to, get a goal. And that's been one of their biggest weaknesses this year. And, I forget who it was. It was either Aduro or Mahalik played a ball in, slipped through the keeper's hands. Sarver was right there, boots it right off the post. That's a chance you got to put in the back of the net. And it's been interesting to see, these failed free kicks and corner kicks so far.
What was the angle like on that when Sarver had that? Because I was up there in the press box. It looked like it was just a tough angle to actually get it on frame. So...
it was. I'm not saying it was an easy angle, but it was definitely an angle. I feel like with Sarver, with his skill, he definitely could have slotted it home to put the Hoosiers up. But it still was a difficult angle to say the least. But should have been a goal.
I think what we were talking about when we were talking after the Kentucky match, I think the first word that kind of popped into my mind was just swagger, which I know is kind of an overused word, but it just seems like. In those moments I described right after halftime, those 3 moments where there was maybe one too many pass, just kind of like, someone having the swagger to just take the ball and go and score, and also in the scrambles in the box with the last 10 minutes left. If someone is able to just run in, get ahead on that, and powerfully put one away, that goes such a long way, I think, for this team.
Indiana in this match, 10 corners to Kentucky's 2. A lot of them came in the first half when Indiana really got off to a good start and had a deserved goal when Henderlong punched it in with his left foot. And it felt like, as a whole, I think the corners were better. I think the design of them, some of them going short, it wasn't kind of the same thing. And for the most part, there were chances that they had. And I think overall, when you get 10 corners, it feels like 2 or 3 of them are going to turn into some really good chances. Although Indiana still doesn't have a goal off of them yet, I think that the design of them was much better, and having a full week off clearly made a difference. I'm not sure if Indiana quite, quote-unquote, has their swagger back, but they got that one goal and obviously are going to push for more. But obviously the Henderlong strike. Henderlong starting, it was one of the talking points. I know the whole formation change has kind of confused us. Obviously, the SID Austin coach is trying to explain it because it's always used to be the classic 4-4-2, which Yeagley has always played, but we saw a 4-5-1. In this match, it was a
4-3-3.
4-3-3?
Yeah.
Is that what it was? Yeah, with Henderlong up top
Mahalik
as the main striker and Mahalik in as the central attacking midfielder. It felt like, as a whole, that was better. I want to ask about what you guys think about Henderlong, obviously starting. Hasn't gotten the minutes he's wanted this year. Didn't have the opportunities he probably wanted last year. What did you think of him? And obviously, what did you think of that goal?
The goal was great. He showed that he has the ability to strike it with good consistency. And I'm no stranger to that, and I think it's something that Coach Yeagley has kind of harped on all season long when he gets the play. It's just he hasn't been able to get in those moments. I don't know if it's a situational thing, but just the way that the formation ran. Malone Kumbali started at right back.
Yeah.
That game. Obviously, with the injuries in the back, with the Joey Mayer not starting, that was pretty surprising, but he came in. They were a very interesting game. I know that kind of got off topic from Carson Henderlong, but just the way that game started with no Joey Mayer, had Malone on the right back, it was interesting. But Carson, he just seems like he creates more space and can create more opportunities in that spot. He was playing some good balls out wide to Sarver and Oduro, and then himself, he's getting into spots where he's able to get a good shot. If he's not in that spot, he doesn't get that goal. So he just knows how to stay home is kind of the way you put it.
Sam, it also feels like his passing as well is something that can separate him. We saw him trying to get some chances on the wings, and I think that's something else that kind of adds to his meaning to this team.
Yeah, he's one of their main, I feel like he's their true striker, or at least one of their true strikers. And he's finished balls throughout his whole career. We saw it at Xavier, excuse me. I'm going to get made fun of for saying Xavier. Xavier, sorry, Jansen. Xavier, when we were talking to him about them playing together at Xavier, he said that he scored, 20-plus goals, and now that was his 25th career goal. It was a great boot, one time into the back of the net, past the keeper. And, it feels like he can really hold the ball up. He can distribute well, get the balls out to Sarver or Aduro, whoever's on the wing. But I feel like he is one of their big key points up top, and he needs to keep playing for them to find success up top.
Matt, also, we had talked about this as kind of the luck factor that Indiana maybe hasn't had necessarily in the 6-yard box, the ball sitting there, or a shot that goes in that's blocked and it goes wide instead of going in. On that play specifically, there was 2 occasions where Indiana kind of got lucky and the ball bounced their way and they deservedly put it in the back of the net.
Well, absolutely, and I think that Indiana was looking for that lucky bounce for weeks. But you also have to give credit to Carson for making that goal sort of happen. Even though you get lucky at times with certain bounces, you just have to go do it. You have to go make it happen. I think something that's interesting is that when Carson transferred last year, there was a lot of questions surrounding his usage and his role, and it didn't really seem like that was really clear. This year, he's looked a lot better. And that was more of a striker goal that wasn't really seen last year. I think something that's interesting, though, is that was the first start for Carson this year. He usually comes on in the 25th. That was his first start as the top striker, as the target man. And the goal that he scored wasn't really conventional for a target man. It was basically just a bounce right to him, and he deserves credit for putting it away, but there was no real through ball there. And I think after that, unless you guys disagree, there weren't really many design plays for him. Obviously, there was that one chance after halftime where they were looking for him, but there weren't very many chances that were going directly to him. And with Indiana almost sort of running out of time to make the postseason, the fear could be that Carson scored, keep him in as the target man, but he didn't really get that many looks. And when you're running out of time, you want to try to find something that's working. So I guess we're going to have to try to see how that pans out.
64 minutes for Carson in this match. 2 shots, obviously just the one on goal and the fantastic goal that he has scored. Obviously, the entire reasoning of why he hasn't been playing, I would assume, is just his fitness, or just the what Indiana wants to do is different from what he did at Xavier and all the minutes that he had. Obviously, Indiana relies so much on speed on the wings as they have, and we've seen that this year with Aduro and Sam Sarver, who Sarver had forward shots in this match. You mentioned the one that went off the post, Sam. He had a couple others as well. Hey, you and Sarver share a first name. It's the Sam connection.
Sam and Sam. The first time you
That's the first time we actually brought that up. Yeah, that's, man. It's
what episode are we on? Like 10 or something?
5, 6?
Oh, yeah.
You see, we're way off.
And I haven't been on yet. Thanks.
Oh,
you were invited, though.
You've been invited.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit my schedule. Come on now.
Well, then change your schedule around. What can I say?
Pull up the receipts and show it on the
camera. Regardless of the Sam connection, it's a rainy morning. It kind of, I think the rain kind of describes all of our moods right now. Gloomington, Indiana is what they call it.
I've never heard of that one before.
You really haven't?
Well, at least it's finally we're at the switch right now in the weather standpoint. We got this bad day right here, but then tomorrow, it goes down to the low 60s and 50s, and that's what it is for the weekend. And it's like, now it's the good weather. No longer do we have to run around sweating walking to classes. You can, throw on the hoodie and be comfortable. Happy for that.
I think we're all happy that we don't have to be, wearing shorts and walking. Of course, stinks across campus. Regardless, that was after the 0-0 draw to Michigan, where I think the storyline was just how did they not score? I mean, there was a situation where Indiana twice hit the post and the crossbar in quick succession within 30 seconds, just ball sitting around the 6. Indiana had like 19 shots or something, did everything right. Obviously, that was Becerra, I believe. Luca Becerra got the start in that match, as Indiana is still kind of trying to toy with the starting 11 and figure out kind of where they are. Let's talk about the formation and I guess who the minutes going forward, because at this point, we're halfway through the season. We know last year at this point, Indiana really didn't know who their starting goalkeeper was. It was kind of around this time, I want to say, where they finally figured out that JT Harms was their guy. So obviously we know the effect of that. They went all the way to the College Cup. Harms was fantastic in the postseason. He's been great so far this year. But kind of at what point do we have to sit here and realize that this Indiana team needs to find that 11 to have that cohesion to string these wins together and get to the postseason?
They can't keep toying around with the formation, and especially it really hurts them when they have to toy around with the back line. I think that's where it all starts. I don't think Kentucky scores if Joey Mayer is playing in those moments. You saw how big of a difference it made when he substituted into the game. And we've been harping all along, like, Chance Miller's been playing great this year. Hugo, when he's been in, has been very solid. But Joey Mayer does not get enough credit for what he does to this team. And, I mean, to not start a goal's given up, he goes in, and then Kentucky's really neutralized for the rest of the game is one thing. Obviously, with Brett's health in question, it really poses a lot of different situations for this team, but I think in the midfield, something has to change. And Jack Wagner, he only played 62 minutes, and this is a guy who's usually playing up in around 80 minutes per game. So Justin Schreffler got a ton of minutes. Clay Mirador came out on the wing. So I think that if you're going to make any change, it's going to happen in the midfield, but it's going to have to be something consistent because it's just been so different every single game.
Yeah, I'm just going to have to completely disagree with you, Joe. That goal, not much you can do there. Absolute perfect strike there.
I'm aware the strike was phenomenal, but the build up. Kentucky had like 4 or 5 shots before. They had a penalty kick right before that. Joey in that situation isn't, one, giving up a penalty kick, and 2, I don't think there's going to be as many shots that Kentucky has in that moment.
Okay. All right, that's fair. I disagree.
No discredit to the shot, though. The shot was phenomenal. I saw a replay of it just sliced through like 3 different Hoosiers. It was crazy.
Well, that's just a match where there's not much you can do about that goal because it just splits all the defenders at the same time. JT Harms has no idea it's coming. It's really nobody's fault, kind of, because it was bouncing around on a second ball with a throw-in. But that definitely is a type of match where Indiana needs to find the put-away goal because Kentucky can get credit for that awesome strike, and they can get the goal and get the equalizer, and so can Carson with that awesome strike as well. But that is a match where if Indiana dominates the second half, that they have to put that away and they have to find that put-away goal, and they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, looking at their back line, as Joe was mentioning, and I agree with what you said, it was just kind of a good hit. I can't do much about it. I feel like they could have cleared it better, but, I mean, the second chance opportunity, they kind of slotted it home. But, yeah, looking at their back line, I mean, I think when we're talking post-game with Yeagley, he said that Joey wasn't practicing as much. Was that what he was saying? And that's why he didn't get the start, just for his fitness level to that point. But, I mean, Brett Beebe being, like, not being able to play as much, that also plays a factor. He's a big factor in that back line. So, I mean, it's hard with their back line because they have a very strong one. And, I mean, they're going to have to, like, figure it out, like, even if BB or whoever's not playing. But they do have a very strong back line.
I did think Maloon fit pretty well, though.
I agree.
I was about to say that.
He played well. Very underrated. He had a few good runs up. There were a few times where he had it like near the top of the box, and I just felt like he should have ripped it right there. He has the shot, and he had, like, at the striker position, he really struggled. But that you might have found maybe not a new home, but kind of a diamond in the rough in the past couple games.
Obviously, this match comes after Indiana's draw to Michigan, which just they did everything but score with their best performance. I think we've seen it in a long time from the Hoosiers against a Wolverines team that they had struggled with. They drew last year. They lost at home the year before after leading 1-0. They lost in extra time. That's something Todd Yeagley mentioned after the match where I asked him at the end, I was like, well, what do you think? We know his opinion last year of extra time, said he hated it, and he kind of doubled back with that and said, yeah, well, I think if there's an extra 20 minutes, a goal is scored no matter which way it is.
He was passioned about that one too.
He
had some fire.
He was. I think it's starting to maybe build up a little bit. We know Yeagley's a pretty cool, calm, and collected guy.
At least when we talk to him.
Yes,
he's screaming the whole game.
That's true. Yeah, he's much different on the pitch. But with us, cool, calm, and collected, win, draw, or loss. So now Indiana 3-3-4. They haven't won since Butler several weeks ago. Their last lead was against Kentucky, but before that, Indiana really hasn't led all that much. Obviously, 2 goalless draws in conference play, coupled with that loss at Michigan State where they gave up a late penalty after equalizing. Michigan State obviously off to a decent start this year and a team that's in the top 25, I'm not mistaken, as is Penn State, who's on the horizon. Let's look now big picture. Obviously not in the spot Indiana thought they would be in after a pretty good preseason. 3-3-4, 0-2-1. Obviously, the conference this year is upside down, it feels like. I think if we take the top, like the predictions, the 9, it feels like it's almost an opposite order. And the Big Ten completely got it wrong, which I think just shows the parity in this conference and the fact that you really can't predict anything. But right now, Indiana is towards the bottom. Penn State is at the top as we speak at 2-0-1. Obviously, the Hoosiers. Maryland is actually last. They have 4 losses and just 1 draw. Indiana 1 loss and 2 draws. The path to the postseason for Indiana right now, it's not do or die with the Big Ten tournament. It's not that desperate yet. Indiana has 5 matches left in the Big Ten, and Yeagley said after the match against Kentucky, after about 5 Big Ten matches, then you can kind of assess. But he said all the cards are on the table. Indiana can win this match. How does Indiana get to the postseason? I'll start with you, Matt, because we've been talking about this a lot.
Yeah, well, I'm going to preface this by saying that I did write something where I said that I thought that Indiana would surge back in the Big Ten to make the postseason. But I will be a little bit more intense about it. If Indiana does not win this game, they will not make the postseason without winning the Big Ten tournament. I think the conference race is a little different because the Big Ten is just very chaotic, and if Indiana gets a draw or a loss, there's still plenty of matches moving forward. 4 after that to try to get points, and teams at the top could tie as well, as we kind of saw last year that Indiana just leaped to have a share or to have a chance to share at the last match. But if Indiana doesn't win this, they are not getting in without winning the Big Ten tournament. There's no way.
That's bold. That's very bold. We saw Jared Kelly, obviously, a former guy on the beat as well. Basically, he's tweeted out after a Kentucky match, he thinks it's Big Ten or bust. Basically, you got to win the tournament or else. For me, I'll quickly say they have Penn State, Northwestern on the road. Those are the teams right now at the top with 7 points each. You need to win 2 out of 3. So it's either both of those matches or you have to win one of those, probably get a draw on the other one. And I think you need at least one upset in the Big Ten tournament. Matt, you're shaking your head, but I think it's 2 out of those 3 in order for Indiana to get a chance. But that's assuming they win their other matches as well. You can't be settling for draws anymore, especially, Evansville, a team they drew to last year. Okay, Trine, we can maybe jot down a win in that match. But
wow, hey, don't speak too soon.
All right, well, you never know. But I think considering it's a D3 opponent, in all respect to Trine, that you can't be drawing anymore. Sam, what are your thoughts? How does Indiana get to the postseason?
Yeah, I mean, they got Northwestern and Penn State coming up, as you guys mentioned, but it's getting to that point where it's almost do or die, and I have to agree with Byrne again. I mean, they're going to have to win this game in Penn State. I mean, it's going to be a big one. I believe it's at noon.
Yep.
Early kickoff. I mean, they're going to have to come out ready to play against one of the top teams in the Big Ten, and then they got Northwestern a couple weeks later, and then they got, Rutgers, Ohio State, Maryland. Games they should win. And if they're sailing with draws there, as Ohio State and Maryland, they're bottom 2 in the Big Ten right now. I mean, if they come out with draws there, then it's got to win the Big Ten tournament then.
There's 5 Big Ten games left. I think they at least need 10 points, probably more. So any combination of 3 wins, a draw, and a loss. If that loss is at Northwestern or at Penn State, I don't think that is too hurtful if they're able to beat one of the other ones. I think they do have to beat either Northwestern or Penn State. I don't think they can lose both those games. If they draw both and win the other 3, that's not a bad situation. I think points-wise, it'll put them in a solid position in the Big Ten tournament. I do agree with Platt that they will have to at least get a big win in the tournament, make the final, and obviously if they win the final, then that will be settled. But it'll be interesting. You can't just sit here and hope something happens or predict things, but a win over Penn State is going to fuel a lot. I think if they're able to get a 2-0 win in University Park, that sets up the season, and they might be able to run the table, and that's when things really start to get interesting.
I'll say this quickly. Obviously, 2 years ago, Indiana got off to the slow start, had those 3 uncharacteristic losses at home. Obviously, they got smoked to, I believe it was Creighton, 3-0. They lost to Rutgers 2-1 in a match they led 1-0 in the Big Ten opener. And then I believe to start October, they lost 2-1 to Michigan in extra time, a match that they also led 1-0 on a late Victor Becerra penalty, which gave Indiana a lead in the second half, and they couldn't hold on, lost in that golden goal. But obviously, 2 years ago, they beat Penn State on the road, 1-0. It was like an own goal, weird deflection late in that match. Gave Indiana the win, and it gave them the momentum to get there to the final day where they traveled to Maryland, had a chance to win the league. Couldn't do so, and actually it was Penn State that ended up winning because they were ahead of Maryland as things stood. And also, last year, Indiana played very well enough to beat Maryland on the final day and clinch a share. Couldn't do so, and then beat Maryland on the road in the Big Ten tournament, which solidified a spot in the top 16. So we've seen Indiana do it before. It's just, can they do it again?
This is going to sound... It's a weird analogy, but it seems like the offense is like a bubble that is so close to bursting. And the moment it bursts, it's going to be goals. And a lot of them. And, like, it had the flash against Kentucky, but there needs to be more than that. You got to see 2 or 3 well-developed goals before you can say that this offense is ready to continue, because you get a goal a game on something like they scored with Carson Henderlong's shot. It's just not going to suffice for the season.
Well, they were so close at Michigan that it sort of warranted the narrative that perhaps it was going to burst at Kentucky, and then they got even closer. So, I mean, again, I guess the narrative now is that it's even closer which is very, very close to the offense sort of taking off. But I think going back to what we were saying is that we have to remember that the field is only 48 teams, not 64, like most common fields. And Indiana's about 90th right now, depending on where you look. So I think that this is a situation where, in order to climb up, Indiana's quality opponents really only are Penn State and Northwestern. The other opponents in the Big Ten are at the lower end of the table, so that it will help them 4 points. But if Indiana wants to make it on their own, they have to get impressive wins. They have to beat Penn State. They have to beat Northwestern. They have to win their first round game, assuming that they'll be the 4-5 game or something like that. And then they have to win another game after that, and they have to win all 4. They need to get that. They need to get Penn State, Northwestern, and also another upset, whether that's Penn State or Northwestern again in the Big Ten tournament, to make it to the postseason. I actually think that it is that dire, but it doesn't mean that there's no confidence now that Indiana can't do it. It's just what they have to do.
7 goals in 10 games.
And the most coming in a game, just 2 against DePaul.
Yeah.
It's been either
that was a
1 or
while
0.
ago. It's been
So
that type of year.
Yeah.
Obviously, Indiana, it feels like, obviously we talk about the matches they need to win. Well, obviously they have to win the home match. You got to beat Ohio State. Feels like you have to beat Rutgers. Those are teams that are struggling. Ohio State 1-2, Rutgers 1-2-1 in the conference. These were all teams that were in the NCAA tournament last year, I believe. I know Rutgers was, Maryland obviously was, Indiana was. Was it just 3? I think
so.
Yeah, because Penn State had a down year. Obviously, they're back on top with many of the guys we knew from really 2 years ago when they won the league, and obviously the goal scoring for them is back. So regardless, I like your 3-1-1, Joe. I think you got to win 3, probably both against Northwestern and Penn State. Drop 1, maybe you lose to Maryland on the road. It feels like a match where, Maryland is even more desperate than Indiana is right now, so that could be kind of a trap that's in a few weeks from now. But, it's one at a time, and Indiana knows that they're certainly not out of it yet. So I guess at this point, is it prediction time? Is it time to make our predictions here on the pod?
Whoa.
It's been a few weeks, so
We'll say, if they're able to get 3 wins in that last couple stretch of Big Ten play, something that the rankings do like is to favor Indiana a little bit, just because of the history. It's what all major rankings do. They favor the historic teams, so they might have a little bit of that on their side if they're able to string together some quality wins.
I feel like they had it last year, obviously.
Yeah.
We didn't expect Indiana to be in the top 16,
No.
and they were.
No.
There they were at number 15, I believe. Was it 15?
Yeah, they were 15.
Obviously, they got a pretty favorable draw, too. Didn't have to play Stanford or Virginia. Didn't have to go on the road until the Elite Eight. So, yes, that is a good point you bring up. But I feel like even more so this year, Indiana their record should be better. They've played well enough to where their record does not reflect the quality that they've been playing. So, Penn State this Saturday, noon, nice big noon kickoff, as they say. Obviously, the other Indiana football team on a bye week, so take center stage on the Big Ten Network as
Can't
it usually
lose on
is.
A bye week.
Well, that's true. That's true. And that's a good point.
I think the bye week still might have won, honestly. I still might
Oh, God. Oh, boy.
Hey, this is the Quest for not a football podcast.
Well, a different kind of football.
That's true.
All right, so prediction for Penn State. Indiana won 1-0 2 years ago on the road. They lost, I believe, 2 or 3-0 in the Big Ten Championship in Happy Valley. Last year, Indiana won 4-2 at home to that was kind of to kickstart their run again to get close to the Big Ten regular season title. And then, of course, they won 1-0 in the 4-5 matchup in the Big Ten tournament, Ryan Wittenbrink with that goal. So Indiana has definitely played well in the regular season against Penn State. And the question is, will 2023 follow the last 2 years And I will start here, and I will say...
You held yourself at such a high pedestal at the start of the year with, like, your predictions.
Really?
Didn't you say you had, like, 7 correct last year or something like that?
I don't know about that.
You said you had, like, a really good record.
I don't think I ever said that. I think you're putting words in my mouth.
I think I went over on the pod, by the way. So
this is your time to redeem yourself.
good.
Do you want to start? You want to redeem yourself? Go ahead.
Okay, so it's going to be another 1-1 draw because Shakes, Penn State's goalkeeper, has been playing well. Indiana's offense is so close, so they'll probably get one. But I mean, Penn State has been playing pretty well in conference play, and I think they're also going to get one. Now, whether who kind of dominates the second half, or I guess who deserves the win more in a draw, I don't really know. But I think it's just going to be another 1-1 draw, and that might kickstart sort of the narrative that Indiana might just have to win the Big Ten tournament, and maybe that's when it comes. Maybe that's when the offense sort of comes alive and can score 2 goals consistently then in a span of 3 matches to win it and go to the NCAA tournament. But just with draws being more common now and the defenses are well, I think it's going to be a very tough time for this match to be the one that Indiana gets the 2-1 sort of put away win.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go 1-1 as well. You're going at Penn State. Penn State can put the ball in the back of the net, and I think that Indiana has a strong enough back four to not let them score a whole bunch of goals, because, it's not like they've let up more than 2 goals in a match this season, besides Michigan State, obviously. But, I think it'll be a tight game. Go back and forth. It's not going to be as physical as the Kentucky game, but I think it'll be kind of like that back and forth kind of, each team will have their chances, set pieces. But I think that, it'll be a 1-1 draw. And then, as Byrne said, they're kind of just going to have to find it out the rest of their schedule.
Shakes is good. That Penn State defense is good. I don't think Indiana scores. They've only allowed 6 goals this season. 1-0 Penn State. I think just the way that Penn State's going to be able to have a lot of possession in the attacking third, and as good of a defense and back line that Indiana's been, with JT Harms really at the centerpiece of all of that, it gets to a point that you can only take so much stress having the ball on that side of the field, and I think that's when Penn State's going to be able to capitalize.
All right. I've been the pessimist on this podcast this year. I said Indiana would lose to Michigan State. I said they draw to Notre Dame, so I have not called for a lot of wins. I did say they beat Washington, which I was very wrong. I said like a high-scoring 3-2 match.
3-3.
That was my worst one of
hilarious.
the year. So I screwed up. I will admit that one. 1-0 Indiana wins. I will say, I think this is the match. Indiana has confidence. I don't want to ever use the term trap game for Penn State necessarily, because obviously when Indiana comes to your place, it's always kind of where you want to play your best, and always, your crowd is most likely going to be one of its best with Indiana coming to town. But I think maybe Penn State's looking ahead a little bit. They have Northwestern in 6 days' time from Saturday, so that would mean Friday. So they have plenty of time off, but they maybe are a bit looking ahead. They have 4 Big Ten matches in a row: Indiana, Northwestern, Rutgers, Michigan. So this is the start of a gauntlet for them. They drew to Michigan State as well, so 5 straight Big Ten matches is something else, and especially after drawing to Michigan State 0-0 on the road, a match where they could have separated themselves. I'll say Indiana wins. I think it's a 70th minute goal or something. I'll say Sam Sarver scores it because he's always had that knack for scoring the big goals this year for Indiana. So I think they're able to put it together. I think Indiana, they deserve to beat Michigan. I think they deserve to beat Kentucky, especially in the end. I think there were 2 chances that Yeagley said that Indiana could have been rewarded with a penalty kick. And no matter who takes a penalty these days for Indiana, I have pretty good confidence in them that they'd score. So I say the Hoosiers win 1-0. It's the same thing. It kickstarts their run potentially back to getting on top of the Big Ten. Right now, the Hoosiers are 5 points behind Penn State, so you win this match, then you just cut that deficit to 2, and I think if they can get hot, you got Northwestern, a team that they have done very well against historically. I know Northwestern, this is kind of an anomaly for them. They snuck into the Big Ten tournament last year, nearly beat Maryland again for the second time in a row in the 1-8 in an upset in College Park, but I think this is the match where Indiana does it. 1-0, a late second half goal, which we've seen a little bit this year, and I think this is the match where they finally put it all together and get their first win since Butler. So
We actually haven't seen late goals from Indiana. It's been a lot. Like
Seton Hall.
The last couple goals have all been like within the first 15 minutes, which looks so promising. Like the goal against Butler and then the goal against Kentucky. It's like, oh, okay, get some offense going, and it's just nothing.
Yeah, I kind of want to clarify something for my predictions so that my, sort of thoughts are all uniform with what I said previously about how Indiana's going to sort of come back in the Big Ten and make the postseason. I still think it is going to be a 1-1 draw, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Indiana can't, get some points in the Big Ten, get a better seeding in the Big Ten tournament, and then go the distance there. Because Indiana is historically over the past 2 seasons played very well in October, but I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know. This could be a case where it's a 1-1 draw, and then Indiana maybe in going the distance in the Big Ten tournament could be sort of a 2-1 win over Penn State or something like that. So, just a little clarification.
I know it's completely off topic, but somehow through this whole episode, we didn't talk about a player on the defense who's played every single game this season as a freshman. Alex Barger has been phenomenal. Like, I just want to say that. Like, it's been what he's done to come in as a freshman, and he's physical. I mean, you don't see that a lot of time with freshman defenders, just being able to sacrifice their body, make plays. I know it has nothing to do with the prediction, but
I'm glad you brought that up.
Kudos to him.
Obviously, the Indiana backline is what we talk about every single year is Indiana's strength, and things have been moving around. And BB's still out with was it an anklet? Do we even know what it is? It was kind of
I think it was lower leg.
Lower leg. It was kind of a non-contact injury, but he's still kind of day-to-day, I guess. We don't really have a real synopsis or diagnosis of what that's going to look like. But I guess that should do it here for, I know we didn't even talk about the fact that you're not even wearing headphones today.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say something at the beginning. My headphones weren't working, so.
You're not shoeless, Joe.
I
You're
have one more
headphoneless,
thing
Joe.
to say.
Yes.
And it's because of what Joe said. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that's something that was really interesting to see at Kentucky was that Barger has played so many minutes, and he definitely is very physical, but I think sort of the Achilles heel maybe of the back line is that when Barger comes out, there really isn't an experienced option at left back for Indiana. And that's not necessarily to take away from Joel Demian because he just hasn't seen them as many minutes. And as a freshman, that is completely fair. But that is maybe a level of concern where if Alex Barger needs to come out for fitness and Indiana really needs a goal, then maybe they're just hindered a little bit by the experience going from the back to the front. And that's just a matter of Joel being a freshman and just not receiving as many minutes as Alex.
I wonder if they should try like a 3-back. Just keep like Joey in the center, Hugo Jansen on the outside, use Barger and possibly Maloon if Brett still has more wingbacks. I don't know. They try and work the wings so much, so it could only really help. I don't know.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, I was going to bring up something else. The fact that discipline is something Indiana's been so good at, or a lot of these teams this year that try and ramp up. I mean, Kentucky had 17 fouls, or other teams that have really tried to push Indiana and almost have them break, essentially, almost playing a mental game. And Yeagley has mentioned his team's always historically very good in terms of discipline, but we've seen Barger a few times pick up yellow cards. It's funny, because he's listed as a forward on the site, which is strange.
Yeah. Preseason, I was a little confused.
Yeah, I think we were all confused
walk
about
out
that.
left back for the first time.
Yeah, the discipline point that you just mentioned, that's a very good point because you saw it a lot during the Kentucky game. I mean, the students, they were very annoying, by the way. They wouldn't stop yelling at Harms. And they would, at Jansen, too. It was just the whole back line and Harms were getting the worst of it. But their ability to, like, even after they scored the first goal, to, like, not, like, turn around and, like, say something to them when you're up 1-0, I respect that a lot. So, I mean, shows how far this team can go.
I mean, you talk about, like, students yelling, but I of all the games that I've seen, even on the away side, the home crowd of Indiana is pretty ruthless. It doesn't matter who they're playing. It's been like that for a while. I mean, that's just kind of the way the culture of, I think, the soccer team here at Indiana is. And I think it's something that's awesome that they have such a good culture as compared to some other pretty major sports here.
I would not be surprised if against Penn State or maybe in the match to follow as well, if Carson does stay as sort of the target man top forward, I would not be surprised if Indiana was working on Carson getting the ball up top, boxing out his defender, flicking it to Sarver or Oduro coming off the side, and one of them just rip it. Because Carson was doing a very good job of sort of that mechanic of just getting the ball, boxing out the defender, and then being able to pass to someone. And I don't know. I think they may try to sort of exploit that more so in the box, kind of like how Sam scored that goal earlier with Maloon, sort of that dish right there, and Sam just went all the way. I would not be surprised to see that sort of at a closer to goal level.
Any final words before
I think we
depart?
accidentally just rambled for.
We always
way
say we're going to
long.
wrap things up.
Yeah,
and
like
we
right
never
when you were
do.
wrapping it up, it was just
We never do.
final thoughts. I got mine out. We're all good.
All right, programming note. Obviously, Sam and I have a special feature coming out tomorrow, I believe, with Indiana football having a bye week. Feels like a good time as Matt is waving to the camera, which is not on him right now. Jansen Miller, we have a special feature on him. Had a nice interview with him last week, so I will be writing an article, and Sam will have a video side. So make sure to check that out at thehoosiernetwork.com. Obviously, follow all of our content. Matt, you want to plug yourself? You're looking at me as if I have four heads. So, I have to plug you. So go ahead.
Looking at
Where can you find your
Just put me on the
content?
spot. Sports Illustrated Indiana.
There you go. There we go.
got the
Final
plug.
words from Matt.
Also, I'm heavily likely to go to Penn State. So
Oh, you are?
anybody wants to come
wow.
with?
No.
Anybody wants to come with?
I got a
No.
bit.
I'm good.
We're
can't.
2 days away
This is
from that
crazy.
happening, and you
This is
already
crazy.
planned that happen.
Sorry about that.
all
But safe
good.
travels.
It's
You're
okay.
you're like the world's traveler with the amount of
I
miles
am.
you rack up.
I
So
know, yeah.
You want to wave goodbye now?
Some travel
Yeah, yeah.
plans?
All right, that'll do it here for the Q49 Podcast. For Matt Byrne, Sam Brunsman, and Joe Cronin, I'm Austin Platt saying so long. We'll talk to you next time.